Hey gang, Fraser here. Welcome back to my continuing Essen preview, a video series in which I present to you about 150 or so of what I consider the most interesting or noteworthy games that are coming out at Essen this year. Now in this list I've restricted myself only to games which are available to buy at Essen and haven't seen a general release in Europe beforehand, at least to the best of my knowledge. If you're watching on PC, remember we've got a lot of games to get through, so consider increasing the speed of the video playback if you'd like to increase the speed of delivery. But without any further ado, let's get to the next game. Ninja Arena. Okay, this looks really interesting. This is a miniatures game, but it's arena based, so you're actually working in quite a small area. And this arena just looks beautiful. It's all wood and made out of wooden blocks, and you can change it up into all sorts of configurations if you like. The miniatures are little metal ninjas. And the gameplay is based on basically some hidden programming, essentially, that you can then activate, and then after that's done, go into the combat round and fight with each other. It looks great. Looks really interesting. I love this kind of thing. It's just so novel, so beautiful to look at. Whether I'd actually get a lot of play out of it, or whether I'd actually be whether I'll actually be buying it at Essen is a different question. But I would love to sit down and have a go of it because it just looks so wonderful. Really looking forward to seeing this one. Not Alone. Okay, this looks really interesting. This is an asymmetric game where one player plays a monster who's hunting the rest of the players, but the whole game is essentially played through card play. So essentially the rest of the players are playing as explorers and will be picking a location for them to go visit, while the monster picks a location to go and hunt. If the monster goes to the same location as an explorer, they will attack them and get closer to victory. If the explorers go to a location that the monster hasn't gone to, they'll get some bonuses. Each round, the explorers will also be getting closer to victory, so they can kind of wait out the monster if they're able to do that. Sounds really interesting. I've heard a lot of good things about people that have tried out prototype copies and played it at Gen Con and things like that. Definitely want to give this one a shot. Very interested in this one. Knoxford. This seems like quite a simple game. It's a card laying game, which you don't see a lot of these days. Essentially, on your turn, I think you have one of two options, one of which is to play a neutral card, and the other is to play a card that is your color. You have to make sure that the edges of all of the cards that are played into the middle of the table are correctly aligned. At the end of the game, if you have more of your colored card touching a neutral card than your opponent does, you'll score that neutral card. It'll be worth 1 point, and the person that has the most points wins. Could be a lot of depth here, could be a lot of interesting stuff going on. I like the way that the board looks as the cards start to spread out and you start to build this kind of Victorian London-like city. Yeah, interested to see how it plays, so I'll be checking it out this year. Of Dreams and Shadows. What an engaging title. Yes, I'm really looking forward to this one. This is a co-op dark fantasy game where you're champions trying to defend the realm. But what's really got me interested, I like the theme, but what's got me really interested is this focus that it's supposedly got on story and on player choice that affects that story. Occasionally you're going to have to make choices that will branch the story off. You might have to make skill checks that will branch the story off. And apparently I've been told that there's going to be a strong focus on moral choices in this game as well. Whether that happens, whether that comes through during gameplay or not, I don't know. I'm going to have to look and find out. If it does, then I'll probably love it. I really, if games that can tell a good story, I'm always a sucker for. I'll really enjoy those. In addition, this has also got a system where you can pick your villain that you go up against. They play slightly differently, and they seem to have some sort of almost like crossroad cards like system for messing with the players. So yeah, I'm really interested in this one, really excited about it. I hope that it's good, and I'll have to go over to Essen and find out. The Order of the Gilded Compass. This is a re-implementation of Alia Jacta Est, which was a great dice placement game. I think it might be one of the earliest dice placement games certainly that I ever knew about. So in the Order of the Golden Compass, I think it's changed things up quite a bit. It's given it this archaeology theme. You'll be rolling dice and then choosing where on all of these different boards you want to place those dice. After all players have done that, everyone's run out of dice, you'll resolve them. Most of the time, you're going to be essentially getting first draft, first pick of whatever is at these different boards, and you're all sorts of different ways to score. So you'll be getting locations, archaeology locations that are worth a certain number of points, and then actual archaeologists, and if they're the right color to go on the locations that you've got, you'll get extra points, stuff like that. If you're like dice rolling, if you like dice placement as a mechanism, then you really need to check this out, because Alia Jacta Est was excellent. This looks like a really great modernization of that system. If you don't like dice placement, then forget about it. Let's get on to the next game. Ortus Regni is one of the most striking games that I'll be talking about on this list. It is a card game that comes in a beautiful looking box, inside of which you'll find 2 wooden deck boxes that contain all of the cards that you and your opponent are going to be able to play with. And on those cards you'll find beautiful historic art, which and nothing else. There's nothing else on the cards. You just have to remember what all of those different cards are and what they do. But from my understanding is that it's actually not too difficult. There's not too many different types of cards, and you'll only be playing with a small subset for each game. But within each game, there's seems to be a huge amount of interactions, card interaction and combinations that can come up that are actually kind of quite thematic. Seems really quite interesting. It's really going for a It's certainly going for a niche audience, I think. I don't think a huge number of people are going to be fascinated by this kind of thing, but I'm really quite interested. The incredibly lush production is one of the things that makes me really want to go see it, but at the same time is probably something that's going to make me not buy it just because of the cost that's involved. But yeah, I'm fascinated by this. I really want to have a game of this and see if the actual game is as good as it looks. Overseers is an absolutely gorgeous looking drafting game which is seeing a re-release just I think a year after its original release with some reworked cards and slightly new presentation. It is absolutely beautiful. So in this game it's quite simple really. You draft some cards, and then once you've got a hand of 6, I believe it is, you play 3 face up and 3 face down. Everyone can see what everyone has played, and then you discuss who you think has scored the most points. You then accuse that player of scoring the most points, and they have to accept that they probably have or deny it. If they deny it and they do, then they'll lose a lot of points. If they accept that they probably do, they'll lose a little points. And if they deny it and they don't have the highest amount of points out of all of the players, then they'll get even more points. Really interesting. I've not played the previous release. I might pick this up just because it looks so absolutely beautiful. Love to give it a go. Looking forward to seeing this one. One of the things that I really enjoyed about playing through the Pandemic Legacy campaign was being reminded of just how good a game Pandemic actually is. So this year they're coming out with this collector's edition. Pandemic Iberia is a limited run version of Pandemic. There's still very little information about the actual gameplay of Pandemic Iberia. I know that you can build railroads, so you can actually now bridge connections between cities, which is interesting. You can purify water. I don't know much else, so I'm looking forward to seeing what other changes there are. I'm hoping that it will win me over and that I'll be worthwhile picking up because I still do really enjoy Pandemic. It'd be nice to have something that had a slightly different flavor, but we'll see. Papa Paolo, okay, this sounds great. Okay, I love pizza, and that's what this game is about. You are the owner of a fledgling pizza empire in Naples, where pizza was invented. So there's a few different elements of this game. The first part is that you essentially have an auction for tiles that you get to then buy and are part of your district of Naples. So essentially where you can deliver pizzas to. So you have your own little map of Naples that's separate from all the rest of the players that you can build up as you like. Then after you've done that, you can take some actions such as delivering express pizzas or getting sponsored by banks or things like that. And then you can actually deliver your pizzas at the end of that. And the more pizzas you deliver, the more money you get, the more powerful all of your actions actually become. So over time you become more and more powerful. Your empire grows and grows. Sounds really exciting. Sounds really fun. It sounds like it could be very heavy, but apparently it's fairly family weight, which is probably good. I think that's about where I'd like this game to be. I'm really looking forward to it. I really hope that it's good. Yeah, I'm excited for it. Pax Renaissance is the new Pax game from Phil Eklund, and that means it's going to be extremely heavy, huge amounts of complexity and a lot going on. Emergent story and incredibly satisfying gameplay for people that like that type of game. I do, not too often, I don't get these type of games played very often, but every now and then I do love a really, really heavy game like this. The premise of this one sounds particularly interesting to me, as like being like an investment banker during the Renaissance and essentially from behind the scenes, you know, controlling the world, sort of Illuminati style. I think it sounds fascinating. If you're into this kind of game, then I think you probably already have this on your radar, and if you're not, then probably stay clear because these games are mind melters. But I do love them when I get a chance to play them, so I'm going to be checking this one out definitely. Perdition's Mouth, Abyssal Rift. Okay, I think this one's been in the works for quite a while. I remember seeing it on Kickstarter quite a long time ago. So what's interesting about this is it's essentially a dungeon crawl, but it's rooted in Euro mechanisms. So for instance, it's very, very low luck. There's no dice rolling as far as I know. And one of the main mechanisms that you use as this adventuring party that are going through this dungeon killing monsters trying to reach the end of this campaign style mission is a rondelle system. So yeah, it's replete with all of these Euro mechanisms, the kind of stuff that you would expect to see in a kind of cube pusher classic Euro, but you're killing monsters and going through a dungeon. Fascinating. I really hope it works. I don't think I can really think of anything else that's like it, so I'm definitely wanting to check this one out, see if it works and see if it's fun to play. Power Grid is arguably Friedman Fries's most popular game, but it's still a bit surprising to me to see that we're going to get a card game version of it, mainly because the full-fledged version of the game is really quite large, quite a lot going on. To see it stripped down to a card game is going to be really interesting, but it's something that I'm very, very interested in because these days, although I still love the full version very much, I very rarely play it just because there's so much arithmetic involved in working out what you're going to do. It tends to be not something that I'm interested in doing these days. If that has been pulled out of the card game a little bit and it's more streamlined and it's a bit easier to play while maintaining all of that interesting dynamics between you and the other players and that tension of, you know, working out which power plants you want and how much you're going to bid for them and things like that, then this could be a real winner for me. Really looking forward to seeing it, hoping that it's going to be what I think it is. And yeah, I can't wait to try it out this year at Essen. Raise Your Goblets. Oh, I hope that this is good because if it is, it sounds like it's going to be absolutely hilarious. So in this game, you get a little goblet, an actual real little goblet. It's a kind of party game, so there'll be a lot of players. And on your turn, you can choose to either fill your goblet with some wine, some poison, or some antidote. Or you can make everyone pass their goblet to the left, so everyone's goblet moves around the table. You're trying to kill someone. Why are you doing this? Because at the start of the game, everyone is assigned someone that they're trying to kill at the table. And this is open knowledge, so you know exactly who's targeting you, who's trying to get you killed by the end of this feast, I suppose. When you've served all of your wine, when you've put all of your wine chips into your goblets, you can call for a toast, which essentially signifies the end of the game. Everyone gets one more turn to do something, and then everyone has to drink. If you have more wine or more antidote than poison, then you'll live, and if you have more poison than antidote, then you'll die. That's it. I can see that this might not work out, and I can see that it might be really, really fantastic. So I'm hoping that it's the latter. I love this kind of thing. I can imagine it with a really fun, boisterous group, this being just an absolute laugh riot. So I'm really hoping that it's going to be a good one. I'm probably going to pick it up, and so I'm looking forward to taking it back and trying it out. Okay, Raymaster sounds really quite odd. I've read the rules, but I still find it a little bit difficult to understand exactly what's going on here. But it's a kind of pseudo-worker placement game where the idea is that you're competing scientists in the same lab trying to get some funding. And you've got this shrink ray, right, obviously. And what are you using the shrink ray to shrink? Dice, obviously. So the best thing that you can come up with, the best way to win is to have the smallest dice with the highest value on them, okay? So a really small die with number 6 is basically the best thing that you can create in this game. And on your turn, you're basically kind of putting workers down to, aim this giant shrink ray, which everyone is sharing, essentially. Everyone's competing to use the shrink ray. You can send your scientists and your students to aim the shrink ray, activate different actions to manipulate dice to hopefully create the smallest but most highly valued die that you can. It seems really weird, seems really odd. I'd definitely like to see how this plays, if it works in action. It sounds very unusual. I can't think of many games where you've got this kind of shared resource, essentially. This shrink ray is something that all the players are sharing, and so as you're manipulating it, it sounds very interesting, sounds intriguing. Definitely looking to find out more about this come October. I was first attracted to Roundhouse based exclusively on the cover art. I think it's absolutely charming. In Roundhouse, you're playing the head of a Chinese family in about the 17th century, and it's an economic worker placement game, but what's different here is that the places where you can put your workers are in the Roundhouse, essentially, which is kind of like I think it's sort of the center of the village, right? And when you place a worker, they essentially have to move around this roundhouse. So you can take actions, but you have to move in like a clockwise direction. You can't go backwards. That's my understanding anyway. Which sounds interesting. The kind of activities and actions that you're taking are things like sending your family away on distant business, as well as things like, the standard Euro fare of trading goods. But you're also, worshipping ancestors and things like that. I really love this theme. I really hope it works out well. I'm really looking forward to trying this. It looks gorgeous. I hope it plays as well. Shot and Taunt is a fantastic little two-player game that's been around for a very long time. It was re-implemented as Battle Line quite a few years ago, where two players are essentially playing cards down, trying to win, separate hands, basically. You've got like 12 different locations that you're trying to win by playing runs or simply highest cards and so on and so forth. It's twisted up a little bit by being able to occasionally prove to your opponent that you are going to win that location without having to play any further cards because they couldn't possibly beat you at that location, for instance. Really, really fun, really exciting. I used to have the old version of Shot and Taunt with the slightly offensive art if you were Scottish. Luckily, Yellow has completely revamped the art, so it looks much like... Just kidding. I love it. Looks great. This looks to be like the definitive version of Shot and Taunt, to be honest. The Battle Line version included tactics cards, which I know some people didn't like. This time they're included in Shot and Taunt as an optional variant, so you can play with or without them if you like to. And they kind of switch up the gameplay a little bit. They let you play some cards as jokers, for instance, which changes the feel of the game a little bit. I liked the original, I liked Battle Line, but I don't own either. I'm finally going to be able to own a version that looks pretty, and I can't wait. I'll be definitely picking this one up. As a scuba diver, Scuba has me interested, though I'm wondering how well, from what I've seen, it's going to convey that theme. It does look really interesting from a mechanical standpoint. So in this game, you're playing a scuba diver that's gone diving with your friends, only for some reason you're in competition with them to find the most interesting fish and treasure and things like that. You are presented with a grid that represents the ocean, and you're taking actions to dive deeper, to swim around with or against the current to try and discover different types of fish and treasure and things like that. You can kick up silt to try and blind your friends and stop them from being able to see all this beautiful stuff that's under the ocean. I'm not entirely sure why you would like to do that, but maybe you're just a horrible person. But I'm really interested in this. I think from a purely gameplay perspective, it looks really interesting. I do like the artwork and looking at all sorts of different types of fish and things that you can find. It looks great. Looking forward to trying it out. Okay, I won't spend too much time on this one, but can you believe it's 2016 and I'm about to talk about a Small World expansion that's coming out at Essen. Yes, we're getting, I believe this is a map, just a map for Small World, but I think that's fantastic because Small World is still a fantastic game. One of the things that it really lacks is a variety of different maps. There was one expansion that allowed you to create your own maps that I don't think really worked nearly as well as the pre-constructed maps. So a new map could breathe some new life into this game for some people. If it's languishing on your shelves, then keep an eye out for this, because I think if you'll find pulling out Small World, if you've not played it for a while, will remind you that it is still a really fun, well-designed game. And so yeah, I'm really hoping that this does well. I'm really excited for Snowblind. This is the kind of stuff that I love looking through these huge giant Essen preview lists for, because you never know what you're going to find. And when I saw Snowblind on the list, I just assumed it'd be one of those ones that I looked into and would fall off the list. But it turned out to be one that I'm really, really excited for. It's essentially a press your luck racing game with some really interesting mechanisms in it. So essentially the theme behind this is that you are facing your opponent or opponents and trying to get to the North Pole. It'd be the first team that gets to the North Pole. You start basically at your base camp with all of your men and supplies and things like that, really safe and happy. And in a round, you have a number of actions that you can take. And to take that action, you have to take the die that corresponds to that action. So for instance, moving a single man or maybe two men a little bit closer to the North Pole might mean you have to take a d6, for instance. And then you roll that and see if a bad thing happens. All right. With 1d6, it probably won't. And that's basically the crux of the entire game. All right. So when it becomes your turn again, you can pass and you're safe, or you could continue taking dice. The idea is, let's say you move those two men again. you'll have to take another d6. And now you've potentially got double the number that you could roll, which means even worse things could happen to them. But you can offset that stuff by being prepared, by taking actions that mean more people are together, that you've got more supplies with them, that you've got camps with them. All of these are actions that you can take actions to do all of these things. Make sure you've got large groups of people that are well outfitted. But that means taking lots of these dice or waiting lots of rounds to do it, in which case your opponent might be able to rush to the North Pole before you. Oh, it looks so different, so exciting, so interesting. It looks like there's actually a lot to think about, a lot of different ways to play this game. You can take it slow and steady, you can push a little bit, you can, unlike a lot of push your luck games, it looks like, you know, if you push your luck and you break a little bit, it's not the end of the world. You can just adjust your strategy to try and overcome that failure. This looks fascinating. I mean, this looks really, really good. I can't think of anything I've got in my collection that's quite like this. The whole idea of taking the dice and increasing your danger every time, and then always knowing you want that one last action. You just want to get this guy with the equipment up to that group, but can you afford to take that one more die? Looks fantastic. I'm probably just going to pick this up. If I can get a game of it in first hand, I will, but I'm probably just going to buy this because I think it sounds absolutely fascinating. Really looking forward to this one. Solarius Mission is coming to us from Spielworks, and thematically this looks really interesting. Planet Earth is overpopulated, and so you're sending teams out to populate other planets around the galaxy. It's a Civ game where you're employing dice drafting and dice manipulation, as well as resource management and all that good stuff, set in a pulp sci-fi universe. And while I really enjoy the idea of that pulp sci-fi universe, one of the issues that's got me a little bit hesitant about picking the game up is that the graphic design and the art of the game is trying very hard and quite successfully to emulate that pulp sci-fi era with the similar kind of graphic design and artwork. The trouble with that is that while that was a slight stylistic choice for the era, it was also done that way because it was really cheap and easy for artists and designers to produce, and I really don't like the way this game looks that much, and that's probably going to be enough for me not to pick it up unless it's really sensational. So I'll be trying it out at Essen, and if it's good enough for it to overcome the problems I have with the artwork, then I'll probably pick it up at a later date. Of course, for a lot of you out there, the artwork might be exactly what you're looking for, and so yep, there you go. Spyfall 2. Spyfall is still a great game. I can still bring it out with all sorts of different groups and have a great time in all sorts of different situations. Spyfall 2 is going to add more locations, which is great. Is it going to add the absolutely necessary little cheat sheets that show you where all the locations are? I don't actually know. I'll be looking at that at Essen. This is an obvious one for you whether you're going to want to buy this or not. I probably will because I've played the original so much now. I think I'm ready to try it up with some new locations. Yeah. Sweet Nose. You know about Sweet Nose, don't you? Yeah, the guy that was like, oh, I love sweets, and he eats all the sweets. And then he thought, the best sweets will be in heaven. I'll go to heaven and I'll eat the heaven sweets. And then Thunder God was like, nah, mate. And threw a thunderbolt at him, and then he was ants. It's the Sweet Nose story, and that's kind of related to this game because you don't want to be Sweet Nose, right? You don't want to eat so many sweets that you get hit by a thunderbolt and made ants. Except that you don't actually go to heaven in this game. Anyway, all right, so what you do is this is like a secret trading game, all right? Basically, there's all sorts of different sweets in this game, and it's a trading game. You can trade sweets with different players. The thing is, your sweets, say you love red sweets the most, they're worth like 3 or 4 sweetness to you. So you want to get as much red as you can because then you can eat less sweets but have more sweetness. Weird. Sounds really weird. Sounds really interesting. I'm really keen to try out and see if it actually plays well. I really do think there's a really good potential for a really solid deduction game down here. A lot of social interaction, trying to determine if that person really wants that sweet or if they're bluffing, if they're pretending they want that blue sweet a lot so that they can, actually collect the yellow sweets that they're really after. If you have too many sweets, if you collect too many, then you'll end up like Sweet Nose ants. You don't want that. Interesting. Looking forward to it. I'm definitely going to try it out. Tuluva is a wonderfully presented, beautiful little abstract game. I'm not a fan of abstract games at all, personally. They really just don't interest me at all. Tuluva is beautiful enough that it drew me in. It got me over that natural instinct not to bother with abstract games. And it plays wonderfully, but just one of my favorite thing about it is just how it looks. You're slowly building this island out with your fellow players, putting out huts and temples and things like that in a kind of standard like abstract way to kind of block off other players and try and expand and put out as many huts as you can, so on and so forth. Again, it just looks so wonderful. Well, this year they're coming out with a deluxe version, and the base game looks so good. I can't fathom what this deluxe version is going to look like. So that I'm definitely going to go. I need to go and gawk at it, and so I'm going to this October. Terraforming Mars, another Martian game. There's a few of these this year. This has got a very similar theme to Martians, a story of civilization, where you're terraforming Mars, although in this instance it's entirely competitive. In this game you are attempting to get the planet of Mars to have a certain concentration of oxygen in the atmosphere, as well as increasing the planet's temperature to a habitable level. And you're doing this mainly through card play. So a big mechanism in this game is essentially each round getting some cards and choosing which of those cards you want to purchase secretly. So you have to spend some of your hard-earned money to keep these cards, or maybe you might want to keep your money and forgo the chance of playing these cards. And these cards are essentially going to be different types of technologies and things like that. They're going to help you build an engine to get all sorts of different resources, to help you do things like put out water onto the planet, to put out fields and things like that onto the planet, as well as to simply play more of those cards, which are going to help you do all of these other things as well. Well, one of the really interesting mechanisms I think about this game is that a lot of these cards don't just have purchase costs, but they are actually tied to the environment of the game and the situation of the game. So for instance, some of those cards, like for instance, certain plants, you might not be able to put out. You might not be able to play those plants because the oxygen's now risen too high and those plants won't survive, or you might need to have the temperature of the planet already high enough to put out some cattle, for instance. Great theme, really love the idea of the theme. I really like the look of this one. The mechanisms sound very interesting, some novel stuff going on there. So I'm definitely wanting to check this one out. From what I've heard of people that have already played it, it's supposed to be good. So yeah, definitely wanting to check this one out. Looking forward to it. Many years ago, I played Martin Wallace's Mordred, which was a wonderful game that I really enjoyed, though I think it's quite divisive. It was the first game that I'd ever encountered that introduced me to this idea that the game could end in multiple different ways, and depending on how the game ended would change the victory conditions. That was absolutely fascinating to me. It still is. In fact, there's not that many games that do this, even today. So for instance, it had this concept of corruption, essentially, that if you gained too much, you would trigger the end game and you would definitely lose because you'd taken too much, and the person that had the least amount of corruption would win the game. But if the game ended, for instance, because somebody had managed to build loads and loads of castles and towns and things like that out on the board to defend Wales from Mordred's invading forces, then how much corruption you had wouldn't matter at all. It would be how many castles and things like that were out on the board. Fascinated me then. It still fascinates me. It had this the divisive part was that in the game you really needed money. And so what you would do is you would roll 2d6 to find out how much money you got, essentially. But you would roll against one of three tracks. Track A had the least a chance of you getting corruption, whereas track C had the most chance of you getting corruption. But also they all had much higher money that you could gain from it. And each point of corruption you got also meant that you would have to put more minions of Mordred out onto the board, which is a really interesting way of connecting those two mechanisms. And that could actually be useful sometimes by strategically placing them somewhere where a player didn't want those minions of Mordred to be. But that's Mordred, not the game that I'm about to talk about, which is The Arrival, which is essentially, I heard, a re-implementation of Mordred, which is the reason why I'm interested in it and talking about it just now. So we've gone from Wales, we've rethemed it, now we're going to Ireland, and it's not the minions of Mordred, it's some sort of demon folk that are invading Ireland, and we're settlers essentially, trying to defend the place and trying to take over ourselves, to be honest. So one of the main things that we've got that's disappeared here is the that divisive dice rolling, which I quite enjoyed, is gone now, but it's been replaced by an absolutely fascinating sounding card system, where essentially you have two cards flipped over and you can see their faces, and they've got 3 tracks on them. And each of these tracks has different resources that you'll get. Well, looking at those 3 tracks, you have to decide which one of them you don't want. Okay, so I'll pick this one. I'm not going to get any of the resources on that track. You get a 3rd card which is flipped over, and now that you've got a little bit more information, you have to choose another one of those tracks to kill. You're not going to get any resources from that track. Finally, a 4th card comes out, and everything that's on that remaining track, you get those resources. Including corruption. So that works a little bit in the same way as Mordred did, where the more corruption you have, the closer to potential defeat you are, and also every piece of corruption that you get essentially makes more of these demons that are invading Ireland move onto the board, and that's potentially going to be troublesome too. I'm not sure about it. I definitely love this card system. It sounds really fascinating to me. I'd really like to play that. I'm not sure overall that I'll like it more than Mordred though. I think I'll kind of miss that dice mechanism, which was quite divisive in Mordred, but I liked it. I enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to check it out though. Yeah, very interested in it. It's making me really want to find a copy of Mordred though. The Colonists looks to be a Caverna-sized big Euro game with lots of components. And what's interesting about this one is the main goal of this game is to have full employment in your colony. So to achieve that, you're doing things like building houses and other buildings and upgrading those buildings and educating your people, which is an unusual thing to do in this kind of game. And I think one of the main constraints seems to be that you're going to obviously have to have a lot of resource management and collection, but you've got very limited storage for these, for what you collect. So really interesting, a lot of interesting stuff that's going on there. I've heard that it's apparently very modular as well, and you can tailor the game quite a lot to have experiences that range between half an hour to 3 hours, which is fascinating. Will that work? I don't know. It's a very expensive game, so I probably won't be picking it up unless it looks phenomenal. But because of these really interesting and unusual aspects to it, I'm definitely going to be checking it out. The Datalist Sentence is coming to us from Eagle Gryphon Games, and it's one of the few cooperative games that I've seen coming out this year at Essen that looks like it might actually be quite good. So in this game, you're a team of people that have been locked up in some futuristic prison and you're trying to escape. And obviously, futuristic prisons are completely circular. So you play on this circular board, which I'm sure will have a really strong visual appeal on the table. You're trying to escape by getting further and further from the center, getting from the innermost ring to the most outermost ring, and then finally finding the exit and escaping. And you're doing that by spending actions to explore tiles. The entire map is hidden from view at the very start of the game. But some of the locations in the prison are obviously going to be extremely dangerous, while others might actually be a little bit helpful. There's going to be enemies who spawn, guards that are running down, trying to chase you and recapture you. You're going to be able to actually manipulate the board, actually change the structure of the prison occasionally. You've got the ability to actually look a bit into the future using this Theseus device. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but you get to essentially see which guards and enemies might be spawning and what changes to the prison might happen. You're going to have to make sure that whatever changes or actions that you're taking aren't accidentally trapping one of your friends. Looks interesting, looks really fascinating. I hope it works quite well. I like the theme, I like the idea. I'm hoping that the whole idea of this circular prison trying to get out to the outer ring and then escape the outer ring works. Definitely looking for a demo, looking forward to it when I get to Essen in October. And that's it, gang. That is it for this video. I really do hope you found that useful and entertaining. We covered a huge number of games, and hopefully some of them piqued your interest, and you'll now be able to go off and have a look and do some more research about them on your own. If you did find the video useful, please consider subscribing to the channel, because that way you'll be notified when the next one comes out. And if you'd like to help me produce more content like this, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Don't forget that I also do ordinary video reviews about board games and card games, and if you'd like to check those out, you're more than welcome. In the meantime, let me know what you're looking forward to at Essen in the comments down there below. I'll definitely be keeping a lookout for those. And until the next time, bye-bye!